10 years ago, on the night of October 31st, a small Midwestern town fell victim to an escaped killer. Under the cover of darkness, he carried out the most horrifying mass murder on record. 16 people in cold blood. Ever since that night, no one has forgotten his name. And Halloween has never been the same. Now, Michael Myers has come home. He has returned for one more night of unholy terror.
Michael! Somebody help me! He's here to kill that little girl and anybody who gets in his way.
Oh, God!
Who's gonna be next?
Halloween 4, the return of Michael Myers.
Maybe nobody knows how to stop him.
The opinions, viewpoints, and beliefs presented on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the management, the affiliates and broadcast partners, or the sponsors. Listener discretion is advised.
Scarefest Radio, the radio you can see.
And hello and good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Scarefest Television. The original broadcast date, April 26, 2024. And I'm joined tonight by my co-host, Mr. Chad Harlan, who literally would have...
excited to be here tonight.
He would have beat the life out of me had I not picked on him to co-host tonight, because our guest is Danielle Harris. Danielle, welcome to Scarefest Television.
Thanks for having me, guys.
And I don't want to take any more time away from Danielle. I'll just say, hey, I finally got a haircut, everybody. I finally got a haircut just for tonight. And it's kind of hip. It's kind of modern. It's a new thing for me. And that's really about all I got, everybody. So,
looking good.
Now I want to say, okay, Danielle, you have already impressed me. You are terribly polite. And very, very nice, and despite us little peons. Now, I spent the week doing a Danielle Harris movie marathon, you might say.
Oh, God.
So I hope you make $1 every time I watch something, but I know that didn't the way it works.
I don't make anything, trust me. Unfortunately.
But, okay, now here's what surprised me, though. Usually when I have a famous scream queen such as yourself on the show, it kills me trying to catch up on what they've actually done, because it'll say Felissa Rose is the worst, and I have told her to her face. Featuring Felissa Rose, and she's in the movie for like 60 seconds. You, on the other hand, I started at the top on your 105, the IMDb credits, and you had some pretty juicy parts on darn near everything that I could stream and had time to stream.
There's only a few things. I started to catch on to producers doing that a couple of years ago when I didn't know, because I wasn't really getting hired for like cameos until a few years ago, really. And I just thought, oh, I'll be on it with or an and. And then all of a sudden they started putting my name before the title, but it only worked a day. And because that's how they market it and sell it. And then the fans get upset and I get upset because I don't want people to be misled that I've got this big role and then I'm in it for 30 seconds. So that's in my contracts now. I don't allow them to put my name above the title unless I actually have like the lead role.
Well, good for you. Good for you. I've gotten so used to it. Like I said, I just expected it. But But anyway, you've got 100. Everybody, this lady has 105 IMDb credits, and I, of course, didn't get to go all the way down the gamut because I have a life. But I will say, I did not. Usually, I have some movie that I can trash the guest over. So, oh my God, why did you do that movie? No, you've done some pretty solid work in the last few years. Oh,
I could name some that you could talk trash about.
We'll get to that. We'll get to no. Please do. I do want to say one thing. Now, this is I'm gonna give you a quick compliment. Take it for what it's worth. You have the best scream, and it very, very genuine. Not as blood curdling. Your screams come across as very, very genuine on screen. Is that something you trained for? Was that natural?
It is natural. And I didn't realize it until I had children and realized that my younger son has the gift that I have. And it's crazy to hear it. And then seeing, watching older stuff. And it really is, it's hard to scream, I think, when you're like, it's not hard for me, but it's hard to scream when you're not used to doing it. It's like a guttural thing. And a lot of people, it comes from the throat. And for some reason, mine is just like deep, dark childhood trauma down in there that just comes pouring out on screen. And I've used it for good versus evil. So, well, sometimes evil. But thank you. I appreciate that compliment.
Now, okay. Now, the first one I watched, actually, the only one I was disappointed in, and it wasn't that it was a bad movie, Project Dorothy.
Yes.
And everybody, okay, if you haven't seen it, synopsis, she's the sexy computer.
I'm AI, the future of the world, unfortunately.
And once they make it where I can actually change all the voices on my devices and let I will so pay for you to do the voiceover for everything.
Do you want me to do your AI?
Yes.
I love it.
Okay. Let's see. I watched. The next one I watched. I just kind of, like I said, I went down to the thing, Roadkill, which was you didn't have a huge
part in that. Yeah,
you had a small part, but it was a meaty part. But then Redwood Massacre, Annihilation.
Yes, I whooped some ass in that movie.
That was another solid movie. I've watched so many. I got to remember everything I was going to ask you about.
We shot Redwood Massacre in Scotland, and my son Jagger came with me because he was only 7 months old and I was still nursing. So I flew across the country, and I did that movie because my friend Natalia was actually cast with her husband. Matt, who's also a well-known actor. He was in Spiral and a bunch of other horror movies, but Matt Passmore. But he got another job and couldn't do it, and then she didn't want to do it without him, and they literally called me like a week before and said, "We've got this part. Do you want to do it?" And you leave in a week, and it shoots in Scotland for a month. And I was like, I have a 7-month-old and I'm nursing, and I have no idea. Like, this is, and I had a 1.5-year-old at home too. So I was like, fuck it, let's just go. So so I got on a plane and went to Scotland and filmed that, and I had a great time. Those guys were so great. The fight scenes are really cool. It was fun to just get back in the ring, and it had been a minute since I had been like the lead essentially in a movie, since I had been pregnant and having kids and stuff. I wasn't able to take those roles, so it was the first one that I could actually kind of do that.
You came across as a genuine badass in the movie. Now you said get back in the ring. The basically the fighting in the movie. How much of that was you? I mean, especially the early boxing scene where they're just showing you. I mean, is that something you actually train for fitness or?
So I took Krav Maga growing up. So, and I owned a fitness studio. So I always was super into working out and exercise classes, but definitely not. I mean, listen, did you guys ever see the movie The Last Boy Scout back in the day with Bruce Willis? Okay. So the opening scene of that movie, I guess, I don't remember the character's name, but it's Billy Blanks. So in the beginning, when the very opening, when he puts a gun to his head out on the field and he says, "Ain't life a bitch?" and then he shoots himself in the head. That's like the big opening of the movie. That was an actor named Billy Blanks, and Billy Blanks created something called Taibo. And back in the day, it was Billy Blank's Tybo when there were like infomercials, and it was the guy that was like, using sort of boxing cardio classes. So I started kind of back then. I guess I was 14 was when I really started to get into like, oh, I probably should exercise and take care of myself. And it started pretty much with Billy Blanks and Tybo. So I've always been into that kind of stuff, but I was happy to get to show it on screen. And then I thought like, okay, the guy playing the killer, Damien Peckler he's like a professional MMA guy. So I thought no one's going to believe that I could whoop his ass because I'm like a little teeny nothing, but it's super believable. And I did it. I had like bronchial pneumonia and we were filming in some underground bunker and it was like 8 degrees in there. And I had my baby on the side and I was kicking his butt. So I enjoyed that movie.
My takeaways from the movie. First of all, you answered one question. I was wondering where it was shot because the scenery that they used, especially when they opened it, was just absolutely knock your socks off.
Yeah,
I'm thinking, is there that? I don't remember that in America. Now and like I said, okay, when Bud was the name of the character, the big guy, was it Bud?
I don't remember. His name's Gary.
Okay, well, when Gary confronted the killer and threw his gun down, I went, oh fuck! Now no, just go ahead, get it over with. But
Gary Casper, he's one of the nicest people I've ever worked with in my life.
I believe that he has very nice. He has that big teddy bear screen presence.
Yep.
Now I'm gonna say that I hated the end of the movie, but I saw it coming and I hated it for the right reasons. Now I'm not gonna give spoilers, people. You need to watch it. I think it's on. I think that one was on Tubi.
Yeah.
But definitely a solid slasher movie, and then I'm gonna go ahead and toss it over to Chad. I'll give Chad 5 minutes. We started 5 minutes late.
Okay.
Yeah. My producer's going commercial, and I said, no. Well,
I was thinking the same thing, but I'm excited to get a few minutes here. Danielle, it's a pleasure to talk to you. Like Wes said, I would have probably assaulted him if I hadn't had an opportunity to co-host tonight. So I am very excited to get a chance to talk to you a little while. Certainly a big fan. Listen to your podcast.
Thank you.
Enjoy your work. So I'm gonna start out with the easy questions that I'm sure most of our fans probably already know, but there may be a few people out there. You started very young. How did you get into the movie business, and how did you get Halloween?
Well, believe it or not, and I'm such a tomboy now, my mom had me in beauty pageants when I was little. So I grew up I was born in New York and then I moved to Florida, and that was just kind of a thing I think that a lot of people did in the 80s, put your kids in pageants, it's not really much else to do. And so I did pageants, and then I was while doing pageants, I was taking dance class and then acting class and all of these things and got a bit of the acting bug. And then when I went, I won a beauty pageant that brought me to New York, believe it or not. And I was there for 10 days, and it was like a talent scout competition sort of thing. In retrospect, we probably had to pay a lot of money. Like now that I'm an adult, I realize like all that stuff's kind of BS, you just are kind of paying for you to be in those things. But I did get asked to be signed by an agency in New York called the Little Rascals, and I was still living in Florida at the time. And obviously we couldn't move to New York. And then ironically enough, it was in the cards for me. My stepdad at the time got transferred to New York about a year later for work. So my mom was like, well, we should call that agency, the Little Rascals, and see if you still want to do it. So we did. And I worked a lot as a kid because I was tiny, but I was a little bit older. So if I look at like commercials or look at older things that are resurfacing now on the internet that people post, and I'm like, oh man, I'll share it on my Instagram. I'm like, oh my God, how'd they find that? That's like 40 years ago, So I worked a lot because I was more well behaved, I think, as I was older, but was so tiny that I could play a little bit younger. Even in Halloween, I was 10 turning 11, and I think I was playing how old was I playing? Like 8 or 9 or something. So, I mean, shit, I did Halloween, Rob Zombie's Halloween, and I was 30 playing 17. So I've got good genes on my side. Hopefully they stay that way. But so I started just doing commercials and print work in New York, and it led me to get on a soap opera. I'd moved to, doing TV stuff, and I was on a soap opera for a few years, and then started to get into, movies, and then Halloween 4 just so happened to be an audition that I went on. And I can still remember like the final call of being in the room with Dwight Little, the director, and it was down to me and, ironically enough, Melissa Joan Hart. So it was the two of us in the, waiting to go in, and I got it. I mean, listen, she's done fine for herself. So I'm not, she ain't mad at me, that's for sure. And then it just sort of took off from there. And, I still have a great relationship with Dwight. We did a movie recently called Natty Knox that came out, unfortunately, during the strike, so we couldn't promote it. And I was really bummed out because it was our first time teaming up since, we did Marked for Death as well together. So I did Halloween 4, Marked for Death, and then Natty Knox. And he was like the first director that has ever said, because Halloween 4 was his first movie too, and he had said to me on set, if I ever have anything for you, I'll always bring you onto my movies. And he's kept his word, so he's lovely.
And I watched Natty Knox last night, so
oh, you did?
Anybody who hasn't
good.
seen it, go check it out. It's a great horror movie. So
yeah, it's really good. Robert Englund, Bill Moseley, myself, and it was something that Dwight was really excited about, and called me, and I get this call often. Hi, I need a favor. I'm doing this movie, and I'm like, you don't even have to ask me. You tell me where to be, and I'll be there.
Well, it was great, but one of the things I noticed going back, and I don't know if it was a conscious choice or just the way the cards fell, but you did play a lot of roles, like you said, as a child actor. Mm-hmm. But most of them are not traditional kids roles. Like you're the lead in a horror movie, and then Last Boy Scout. You're certainly not playing a traditional child in that. You're,
right.
You're more of the badass again, and that goes on throughout your young career. A lot of the roles that you're playing are not quote unquote kid roles. They're just played by a young person.
What's interesting, and I've just sort of figured it out. I'm writing a memoir actually, and I've been trying and wanting and thinking about it for about 15 years, and I'd started a long time ago, and I just wasn't really ready. I didn't have my story yet, and I finally have my story now that I have my family. And one of the things that I've connected while writing is a majority of my movies that I've done, I don't have a mother. It's usually me and a father, or me and a monster. And I usually play, kind of a tough girl, or someone that maybe finds her strength throughout the process, or then becomes vulnerable and, and isn't such a tough girl after all, like Last Boy Scout and Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, and like that kind of stuff. And a lot of the roles I played when I was older. And in real life, my father had passed when I was 7, right before I got into the business. So I sort of had all of these interesting relationships with men on screen, dad characters. Like even when I was on Roseanne, I didn't have a mom. I was in Don't Tell Mom, the mom was gone. Like there's never, and the other movies are is the Uncle Boogeyman or Kane Hodder, or what I mean. There's always something chasing me. So the through story while I'm writing, I'm finding interesting coincidences between sort of my life as a kid growing up and then the roles that I was given or got. I'm not quite sure which one that was, if it was just sort of destiny, like path that was already kind of planned out for me, because I got mentored. I had a lot of really positive experiences and a lot of wonderful people, directors, from Tony Scott to Rob Zombie to Adam Green, like all of these. Even when I did Movie of the Weeks, Bill Bixby, a lot of people that really sort of took care of me as a child, like my spirit while on set. So I felt very protected and had like a big group around me. But yeah, not a lot of like typical kid roles, so to say. Even like episodic stuff. I played like either like psychopaths or people with like all kinds of weird random things I played. But I think I had more fun doing that.
I'm sure. Like I said, it seems to fit your personality. Even like I said, listening to your podcast,
yeah.
Obviously, you are not the damsel in distress, and I think your roles show that.
But I'm getting there. Like, things are shifting a little bit. I was talking to Scout the other day because she just directed a feature that I'm also starring in, and it's a cop movie. It's not a horror movie. And I had like a love scene, and she was, after we cut, and she said, "Wow, I've never seen you so vulnerable. Like, even in real life, I've never seen that side of you, Danielle." And she's one of my best friends, and I was like, I think since I've had a family, what's coming across on screen is a little bit more of who I really am now. So it's cool to sort of see that. Like, I saw Natty Knox in the theater, and it was weird to watch me be a mom because I've never seen what kind of mom I am. And like, I am a mom similar to what I've played on screen now that I'm playing mom. So it's kind of cool to see how it's showing up for me.
And we're excited to keep watching. But we'll be right back. We've got a commercial break, and we'll be right back with Danielle.
Bombs is a 2024 Scarefest weekend sponsoring vendor. The Bombs makes bath and body products for everyone. Ashley Dobbs makes unique small batch hand-painted bath bombs, plus sugar scrubs, whip soaps, and body oils. Find the Bombs on Facebook and at the monthly Central Kentucky Mystical Market in Lexington. Scarefest weekend sponsoring vendors make the event happen. Be sure to tell them that you heard it here on Scarefest TV.
Today's Crypt features deals with talents in the horror community, from mask makers, sculptors, artists, and more. Plus, podcast Live in the Crypt, shooting the shiz with BK and the Swag, and BK and the Bees, Horror Buzz. Visit their website, join their Facebook group, and thank them for being a Scarefest sponsoring vendor.
And welcome back, everybody, to Scarefest Television. And our guest tonight is horror gal herself, Danielle Harris. I'm getting questions from all over now. Yeah. Now, first one that I want to know, and it's kind of a follow-up to what you mentioned about how you got started. Did you choose horror, or did horror choose you?
Horror chose me. I didn't even really, I was scared of Cookie Monster growing up. So, I definitely wasn't ready for, honestly, I'm still scared of Cookie Monster, but, and Gremlins, which is why I have them here. I think any animated thing that's not supposed to come to life is freaks me out. But yeah, it obviously chose me. I didn't even really know much about it. At town, I hadn't really seen many horror movies. I wasn't allowed to yet. So it chose me, and I'm very grateful and happy that it did.
Now, from believe it or not, a text message, apparently you and Scout are going to start making movies together. Yeah. The plan is, I understand, every year. Do you have any plan? Well, actually, you've already answered it, because the question is...
I'll tell you. So,
do you have any plans to do non-horror movies? But is this horror? What do you all have planned?
So we're starting our first film in the middle of July. We already have our financing, and we already have most of our cast and our locations, and our script is just going through the final rewrite. We just actually had a huge note session last week. I can't announce who we have attached yet. We've got some really cool, awesome people. And the idea is sort of, we haven't done anything together since Halloween 2, so 2009. And we've developed such a close relationship, and I think you can see that. We did Scarefest, we did our live there last year, and it was amazing for our podcast. And we've kind of created this brand together, and it's nice to have I don't know, a partner in crime, literally. So we have her and I on our text message chats are ridiculous. It's all hours of the day and the night about the most random shit. And a lot of it is I had this idea for work. Let's do a movie about this. Let's do that. Let's do this. Let's do that. So we're just sort of doing stuff. And she came up with this first idea for this movie. And we get asked all the time, when are you guys going to do a movie together? And why aren't you making stuff? And we were like, it's kind of a good question. Because we're just sort of waiting to be hired to work together on the same movie, and it hasn't happened yet because of our schedules. So we're like, we should just do it ourselves. Why can't we just do it ourselves? So we are going to not only star in it together, but we are also co-directing it together which is something that neither of us have done. And I think it's time. I've directed separately. She's directed separately. I've never wanted to take on the challenge of directing myself while I was the lead in the movie, because I just didn't feel like I would be able to be in two places at once. But I feel like Scout and I doing most of the stuff together and both work the same way on set, have the same discipline and understanding of horror, and to know that we have each other's backs when we need the other one to be the monitor, the other one to make the decision while the other one's getting in makeup or whatever it may be. We trust each other and our producers. So we have an idea for 3 different projects right now. The first one's already done, and all of these movies will sort of mesh into one another, but we'll be able to play very different characters in each of them. So it'll be a chance for our fans to see us together, but playing stuff that they haven't seen us play before because we're writing it. And the first one that we're doing, we're actually a couple, we're getting married in it. So it'll be interesting to sort of see the love and the fight and there's just a lot of things that we've been dying to do on camera, and one of them is for her and I to have just a Kill Bill style all out brawl, and we have written the most intense, insane fight scene for her and I that's going to take a long time to choreograph. Then she had this idea, she wanted to do it in a single take, like rope. I was like, there's like body parts and things happening and blood and gags and like we're beating the shit out of one another. So I don't think that we'll be able to do it in one take. But we're ambitious. But they're super, super low budget, tiny little movies. We're gonna shoot it in 10 days and we're gonna rock it out. And I'm really this is the first movie that I think she and I are doing because we want to do it, not because it's someone else's story or we were hired by someone and it's their dream and their thing they've been wanting to do their whole life. This is sort of our thing we've been wanting to do for a long time now, and we're going to make it happen.
Okay, Project Dorothy, Sexy Computer, Roadkill, Sexy Waitress, Redwood Massacre, Adventurer. Okay, get you down to Camp Cold Blood,
yes,
which my wife absolutely loved. She loves a good horror movie that doesn't make her vomit.
Yes, this is Joe Dante. So Joe Dante's, it's the only horror movie that I could probably show my kids because it's not bloody,
right?
But it's creepy and scary and spooky, which is really what Joe Dante is kind of about. So that's Chad Michael Murray and myself, Camp Coldbrook. We did that in Oklahoma actually a couple of years ago. So that's a really good one. That's the last one I think I had done that right when my son was like 6 months. That was my first movie back into acting since I had kids.
Now on Camp Cold Blood, everybody she plays a sexy ghost hunter. Do I remember correctly that you were made like a member of the Hollywood Ghost Hunters with that bunch? And
yes.
I mean, did you get to actually do any real ghost hunting?
Yeah, so that started many years ago.
Right.
That whole crew, Ari Mihailoff and Adam Green and Kane Hodder, and because Kane and all of those guys are super into ghost hunting, and we were actually doing a show called Fear Clinic that Robert Englund and I were in when FearNet was a channel, and Robert Hall directed it, and Kane was in it, and it was a really good series actually at the time, a web series, Fear Clinic, about people with different phobias, and Robert's character, the doctor, had to put them in this, it was like a exposure therapy and make you go back to relive that, and he's a bad guy and all that stuff. Anyway, so we film in most movies or shows we do are in pretty creepy locations, and you can feel it. So the guys we were at Loma Vista Hospital, I think it is, which is known for like being haunted. So the guys came when we were working there, and they brought all their equipment and they started doing this. And I was like, "What are you guys doing? What are you doing?" And they said, "Oh, we're going to ghost hunting." I was like, "I want to go ghost hunting." So, and then they wanted to create a show out of it. And, but everywhere we go, they're kind of into like trying to find all of these creepy places, and I'm just along for the ride. But they like to mess with me though, so I got to be careful, where I find myself with Kane, because he's a prankster and he usually doesn't mess with me, at least not on set when he messes with everybody else. But you never know. Those of you that have met Kane, you kind of never know if he's gonna do something spooky, and I do get scared easily, believe it or not. So we started ghost hunting and using the spaces that we were working in to see if we could find anything.
Chad?
Well, I didn't know that part of your story, so that's very interesting. Certainly, Scarefest has a lot of paranormal fans too, and we usually have paranormal guests. So I'm sure now you'll get a lot of questions when you're there this year about your
oh yeah, for sure
experiences.
Yeah, I mean there was tons of them back. You know, when I started to do Scarefest a million years ago, back in the very, very beginning. I don't know if you guys know this, but one of the things that I would do when I would come to the show was I would always go for a ride along with the cops. So on Saturday, usually after the show, sheriff, I would get picked up and I would go out around town. And I've seen I've done it, I think 3 times. I've gotten clearance and been in the cop car and, you know, done the traffic stops. I've done paddy wagon where I've seen them and, you know, gone with a bunch of drunk kids, pulling them over for DUIs and domestic violence stuff. So I was always really interested, and that was kind of the deal, was I'll come to Kentucky, but I want to go for a ride along with the cops. So so I used to always go do that back in the day. But there were a lot of paranormal investigators at Scarefest.
We try to have a good assortment there every year of both horror and paranormal. So there's a lot of crossover by the fan group. So
for sure.
But let's kind of talk about, we talked about your early career. Let's talk about the second time you did Halloween, when you went from playing Jamie to Annie in Rob Zombies. How did that come about? I think you're the only actor that crossed over between the two, weren't you?
Yes, I was. I got lucky. Also, I kind of coerced them into having me do it. I was at a convention and a fan came up, a woman, and said, "Oh, I hear that they're remaking Halloween." I was like, "What?" So yeah, they're remaking it, and Rob Zombie's going to direct it. And I hear you're in it. You're playing Laurie. I was like, first I've ever heard of it. So I went back to LA and called my manager and said, I heard that they're doing this and Rob Zombie's directing it. And I was already a big fan of his anyway and thought, wow, this is going to be super cool, the style and the idea. And this I'm on board for. And then called them and said, if there's any parts or cameo or anything, I'd love to be involved. And they said, absolutely not. Rob wants nobody from any of the other Halloweens involved in this movie. I was like, oh, okay. So the casting director, we kind of convinced her because she knew me and was a fan from other things that I'd done. And my manager said, let's just bring her in for an audition, appease her, bring her in, just let her read on camera. And, and I was like, oh, if they won't hire me on this, maybe Rob will see me because I know he's a horror movie fan and maybe he'll cast me in something else. And so I went in and obviously wasn't reading for Laurie. I was not right for Laurie. But I saw between Linda and Annie and I was like, I think Annie is a little more my speed. And I was down to do nudity, but not full, which was Linda's character was a lot more than mine was. And I went in for an audition and everybody else just knew it as the untitled Rob Zombie project. And I knew that what it actually was. So I was excited and went in and I won Rob over. So I think once I was in there, he was like, oh, shit. Okay. I mean, he wasn't in the room. He's never in the room when he auditions people. He watches on the monitor from another room because he feels like if he sees the person in real life, he'll be swayed to cast them. And he wants to see what they look like on screen versus in real life before he makes a decision. So I lucked out and got it. And then it just started all over again because I'd only done Urban Legend in between, which is so interesting. In between Halloween 5 and Rob Zombie's Halloween, I had only done Urban Legend. I'd done no other horror movies in that 20-year time span. People always go back to, obviously, the OG Halloweens. But then once I started getting back into it as an adult, I'd realized what how much that world meant to me and was like, okay, I'm ready to be a part of this again.
Well, and certainly, the first one you're playing, as you said, a young child. And so for you to cross over, it made a lot more sense than a lot of other people because you had grown up. And so It wasn't exactly like you were going to be playing the same character. You weren't in the same age group.
Right. Hopefully I get to come back as Jamie one day. That was my next
question is who do we have to call to get, now that Michael's dead, who do we have to call to get the next Halloween series to be the continuing story of Jamie?
Wouldn't it be so great? You know, I've been asked so much about it, and I have like put bugs in everyone's ears that I possibly could of how much it would mean to me to be able to come and bring that story back and see where she is now. And then I have a whole idea of how they could do it. I've written it down. I have it down. I've even like thought like maybe I'll just go shoot something and send it over to Malik or send it over to Miramax and see like, hey, what about this? And I know they're doing, you know, a Halloween universe now, and they're going to do a bunch of different things, a TV show or whatever. And I've read an article recently about, they said something about, they're going to explore characters that maybe haven't been explored as much as they should have from, I don't know if it's just they keep saying the original storyline, which pretty much just means nothing from Rob Zombie's on, because you know, they do them in like 3. So like Rob Zombie's 2 are a separate thing. And then the new ones are Blumhouse. Those 3 are a separate thing. So it would have to be Halloween 1 through 6, essentially, or 1 through however many there were before they did Rob Zombies. They're 13 or something like that. So I think it would be interesting. But then I'm also like, I don't want to have high hopes because I've been disappointed before, and I feel like sometimes they make decisions that have like nothing to do with what the fans might want to see. Hence, you know, somebody else playing Laurie's daughter in the movie. Like when she had a son in H2O, I was like, well, she has a son. It's Josh Hartnett. He's super famous. Like I'm kind of not in that world anymore. I mean, I guess they killed me off and I kind of get it. But, you know, seeing her come back with the daughter now that wasn't me was a little, just kind of hurt and stung a little bit more. So, so I'm hoping that maybe they get a chance. But then I have this nightmare that I'm going to get a call like, yes, they're going to bring you back. And I'm going to get the script and it's going to be like a one day and they're going to kill me. Like I'm going to get so excited and then it's going to be nothing. So it would be really nice to see how I've evolved and what that world looks like and where I've been hiding, essentially. I even have a whole story for the fact that it wasn't really me that was killed off in Halloween 6, and that Donald Pleasant's character had something to do with, you know, with saving me and putting me somewhere else. And like, there's all these things that I'm coming up with. So I'm hoping, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that there's something comes up where I can play her one more time.
I think we're all hoping that. But right now we're going to toss to another commercial. We'll be back in just a minute with Danielle Harris.
Are you a fan of horror movies, books, comics, music, and collectibles? Roomorg magazine is for you. Subscribe today to receive 6 or 12 print issues annually and join me, executive editor Andrea Subisati, on an ongoing journey through the horror genre of the past, present, and future. Plus, get access to unmissable special editions such as A Century of Witches, 50 Years of Gore Cinema, British horror movies, and so much more. Roomorg, the world's premier horror and culture and entertainment magazine since 1997. Accept no substitute.
Hey, since we were talking paranormal just a moment ago, our announcement for tonight is Dave Schrader. Dave Schrader is returning to Scarefest. You know him from the Holzer Files, He was on Paranormal Challenge and Ghost Adventures from time to time. But Dave Schrader, actor, he's not an actor. He couldn't act his way out of a bucket. Paranormal investigator and podcaster. So that's what we got. Now, the Scarefest staff. Now, I have been told to announce, if you want to volunteer for Scarefest, we are now doing it on a waiting list. We actually think we have enough volunteers for most of the teams. But if you're thinking about it, you can still fill out the application at scarefestweekend.com, and we will put you on a waiting list. And if we see we have openings on any of the teams, you can get in. Speaker applications, you got one more month to do that, people. If you want to speak, if you want to present a seminar at Scarefest, you have one more month. May is your deadline, the end of May. The Scarefest Horror Film Festival is still taking entries. If you are an independent filmmaker, or you know an independent filmmaker, or you have a film that, you know the drill, go to scarefestweekend.com, click the film festival link. It'll throw you over to our Film Freeway page, and we are up over 60 films so far. 60 films that we got to weed out. Hey, everybody, my Run for Hope coming up May 19th, 2024, my second 5K of the year, my fourth 5K of my life. Yep. So, yes, I smoked for 41 years. Anyway, you've all heard the spiel. Anyway, Christy Turner, thanks for sponsoring me. My sleepaway camp cosplay will be a thing at FrankenCon because I finally broke the 50-member threshold on my Patreon project. So now, Scarefest fans, if you want to see me do that cosplay with a tramp stamp, we got to get that number up to 100. We need 100 subscribers at patreon.com/ScarefestRadio. It's as cheap as 25 cents a week. You get all the benefits, all if you want to call it a benefit, just for giving me $1 a month. That's how cheap I am. And the Central Kentucky Mystical Market is coming up in May 18th and 19th. May 18th and 19th, Clarion Hotel. We're in the main, we're back in the main convention center of that. So you want to definitely check that out. And while we're talking about things to do, I got the Enchanted Forest Ball. I want everybody to mark your calendar for that. The Enchanted Forest Ball, presented by Mystic Luna. Join them for a magical evening filled with enchantment and wonder. The event will take place at the Clarion Hotel, where the ballroom will be transformed into a mystical forest setting. Get ready to dance the night away under twinkling lights and surrounded by lush greenery. Come dressed in your most whimsical attire and prepare to be transported to a fairy tale realm. Don't miss out. An unforgettable night. Now, by the way, adults only cash bar event. So yeah, no one under 21. So it's a good chance to get away from the kids. If you Google it, I've got a link on the website, but if you want to Google it, it is coming up July 20th. July 20th, the Enchanted Forest Ball at the Clarion Hotel. And back to our guest. We're talking to Danielle Harris tonight, Horror Gal Supreme. This is like a canned question, and usually I don't even give a shit about it, but I'm going to ask you this question because I really like your screen presence. Do you have someone that you would call an inspiration, someone that you look up to in the acting world or was in the acting world?
I mean, there's so many of them. I think it's just individual performances by, when I was little, I would say Brooke Shields. I'd wanted to be like Brooke Shields so badly. But I think she was really all I had, kind of maybe the movies that I was seeing. I mean, it was like Blue Lagoon. I don't know why I love that movie growing up. I used to say that in beauty pageants when they would ask me what I wanted to be when I grew up. I would say, this is funny. I don't think I've ever said this out loud, at least not in my adult life. I want to be an actress and I want to be bigger and better than Brooke Shields was like my saying. So cheesy, right? It was like 1984. But I'm still inspired. I still pick and choose and take from everybody, but there wasn't one person in particular that was like, I want to be. I grew up watching watching The Honeymooners on TV, and I loved Audrey Meadows. So I just loved her chutzpah. I hadn't really seen that, I guess, as a kid on television. So I used to like go to bed at 11 o'clock, and it would be on when I was a kid growing up. And I always wanted to play characters like her or be like her. I guess she kind of had an edge that I liked. And ironically enough, here playing kind of those girls. So she might have been the beginning of her, between her and Brooke Shields.
Now this one come from the chat room. What was it like working with Don Shanks?
Oh,
Someone in the
I
chat
love
room
Don.
wanted to know Don Shanks.
He's lovely. The crazy thing about, and for everyone that's come to Scarefest and goes to conventions and they meet these guys that play these monsters, they're like the nicest guys. They're the sweetest. There's a couple that maybe not so much, but I won't talk about those. But 99% of them are just lovely, kind, wonderful human beings. And Dawn is one of them. And I think when I was younger, a lot of these, George Wilbur and Dawn, they went out of their way to make sure that I wasn't traumatized as a kid, basically. So they were very, making sure that I was just always taken care of, and we were friends and knew what was going on, and they were very protective over me. So he's lovely. I mean, he's still he's like 70, I think he's like 71, 72, and he's built like a brick shit house. I mean, he still works out every day. He's in such amazing shape, and he's just really kind. So I love Don.
Chad?
Well, for those who have been living under a rock, you have a podcast called Talk Scary to Me.
I do.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. I know you do that with Scout.
I do.
How did that come about?
Well, it was during COVID, and I actually was starting to watch while stuck at home, had the time now just to watch a lot of movies that I hadn't seen. And ironically enough, a lot of the movies that I was watching were horror movies, and they were starring friends of mine because I hadn't ever seen most of their movies. And, but they were just my friends, like Felissa Rose. I had never seen Sleepaway Camp. So, but I know Felissa just from being Felissa and from like other things. I had never actually, I should probably not say this, but I hadn't seen Kane's Friday the 13th movies. I liked them in I had seen like Heather and, Nightmare on Elm Street and like kind of the earlier ones, but there were a lot of movies I needed to get caught up on. So during COVID, and I started watching them, and I thought, oh God, we should do like a show about this, because there's not a lot of commentary DVDs anymore where you get to hear like the behind the scenes stuff. And I was noticing certain things that, just from an actress's standpoint and from making horror movies, that I think a lot of maybe general audiences wouldn't be picking up on, and or they were, and I thought maybe I should film it and like have them come over. I pretty much just wanted to watch TV with friends when I was so isolated during COVID, and so I would film it, and they would come over, and we would watch their movie together for the first time. And I also love talking to people, and they're my friends, so the conversations were a little bit different because there was no guard up, and they would forget we were like filming, so we would be talking about stuff that was a little bit different than what maybe fans had seen in other interviews. And I got to see their movies for the first time and with them. So I did, it was called Calm and Terror, and I did Felissa Rose came, we did Sleepaway Camp. I had Dee Wallace came, I saw Cujo for the first time with her. Adam Green came, I watched Frozen. He was like, I thought we watched Hatchet too. It's like, I don't need to watch a movie that I've been in. I want to talk about things that I am not in and learn. I did the original Hatchet with Perry Shen. We did, what else do we do? Hocus Pocus. Omri Katz came over. We watched Hocus Pocus together. So I started to, and Kane came over. We watched part 7 together. And so stuff that I've been hearing them talk about in Q&As at shows, I was able to finally watch for the first time. Like, I'm like, oh, there's a sleeping bag kill that Kane always talks about, like that kind of stuff. And then asking the questions, the behind the scenes stuff that I wanted to really know that maybe fans wouldn't have the balls to ask or whatever. And then, of course, Kane's dirty, the whole, like, I got a date with a soap on a rope. Like, Kane's like, what soap on a rope is. Like, so we have that banter, too. And one of the episodes, Scout came over, and we watched, I wouldn't tell anybody what we were watching until they would come over, and we watched 2018 Halloween, because neither one of us had seen it. And I thought, this would be cool to kind of watch our reactions to things that we're seeing for the first time, and then see what we think about the way they're going with the Myers franchise. And we had such a fun banter and conversation between the two of us, my husband was like, you guys need to do like something together, like more than just this. You guys should do something like a podcast. And neither one of us really listened to podcasts. So we were like, I don't know. And then we were like, well, it's COVID. We could like try and just see. So we put it out there and said to the fans, like, we're going to do a podcast, Scout and I, what should it be called? And then we got a ton of, people writing in like, that's so cool. And a fan came up with the name Talk Scary to Me. And so we were like, that's it. That's going to be what it is. And then it became different because what we didn't want to do was I didn't want it to be what was already being done. I didn't want it to be another review, horror movie review show, or just talk to other horror actors about the same stuff that we've all been talking about for years. I wanted to do it different. And also I felt like a lot of the people in the community maybe could use some advice, like relationship advice, and everyone's our age. It's either my generation or Scout's generation. And we have two different opinions and sides to offer, me being married with kids and her just getting married, and give some guys and girls some good sex advice and dating advice from some ladies that maybe would be fun to hear them talk about stories. And so we just said, let's just go for it. And it's evolved and changed and shifted. And we've tried different things. Like we tried even having like live calls where we would just pick up the phone, and that didn't go very well because people were like, wait, I'm really talking to you. and then someone would call like drunk, and they were like, wait, who is this? I don't know. My brother just told me to call this number. Like, so we learned quickly, don't maybe pick up on live calls.
You need a screener for sure.
We were like, we love lines, and we wanted to just kind of do stuff. So Talk Scary to Me became more about talking about subjects that may be a little bit taboo or difficult to discuss. And we've been very open with our pasts and our addictions and our love lives and, childhood traumas and things that were relatable to our community, that they could get to know us on a different level than what they're used to seeing on screen or have seen or read about in other, in other outlets. Yeah, we still talk about horror movies and making horror movies and what we're working on and all the behind the scenes stuff. So you get all of that too. And it's been a fun ride. And then we started doing lives, and Scarefest did a live with us last year, and we had an amazing time, and we're going to do it again this year. And, the people that don't know what they are, basically it's like an hour and a half to 2 hours at the conventions, because as much as I love karaoke or like the VIP parties, I felt like we could step it up a notch a little bit after all these years. So we started doing them Saturdays. You come to the podcast, you get to hear us do a live, and you're going to hear it on the air. We bring guests that are at the show, which is always fun to have them in person. You guys get like an awesome swag bag with like either hats or shirts or goodies or condoms or pictures or whatever, naughtiness we can come up with, candy, all kinds of stuff. And, there's group pictures with us, and you get to ask questions, and it's like a big party. So it's been really fun to also get to know people on a personal level. Like, we know our people. We always knew you guys from coming to the table, but we get to talk about other things. And a lot of fans that are now friends will come to our tables at shows and ask us our advice about their love question, or, hey, I wrote into you about hadn't had sex with my husband in 3 years. Well, I took your advice and now we're doing it all the time. And he wants to say thanks. And, just like, I don't know, fun stuff that is a little bit different. And now nobody really talks to us that much about Halloween at conventions. They talk about their love lives. So it's fun to have a little bit of a change and to make it more personal. So yeah, and we partnered with Bloody Disgusting. So we're working on video content. We are on Patreon, and I think I think seeing the video is much cooler than just listening to it. And we're working on the YouTube stuff, and we're just trying to make it as cool as we possibly can.
The last question before we cost to another break. I'm going to, you already talked about the fact that you're extremely open and share very personal details on the podcast. Mm-hmm. Is there anything you shared that you wished you hadn't?
It's a little bit tricky because, there are some things that come up. The answer would be yes. There are some things that come up that maybe your partner doesn't know, that in conversations have come up, and then you're like, oh yeah, I dated that guy, but it was like nothing, and then then my husband's like, but they're like, now when I see this person on television, I have to think about like the fact that like my wife dated him, and it like freaks me out. So there's a couple of names that I probably shouldn't have been as open about as I was, but I'm an open book, and I don't have any issue with anybody. So there's no reason for me not to share kind of a fun story, even if it's goofy. So that's probably the only thing of like, I probably shouldn't put like the names in my husband's head of people that he could. It's not like a regular person where you don't know them unless you search. You know, we'll be in bed watching TV or like getting ready for like our sexy time, and all of a sudden a commercial comes on, and then I'm like, oh shit. He knows that was an ex of mine or someone that I dated. Now he's going to be like all in his head and weird about it. So that's pretty much the only thing, is maybe I should have left some names out of my podcast, but.
Well, like I said, we're getting ready to toss to a commercial break. For anybody who hasn't checked out the podcast, make sure you do. It is a great way to learn more about Danielle and Scout. They share a lot, they talk a lot, and it's very entertaining. So check that out. But right now we're going to toss over to a commercial.
Trick Studios is a Scarefest weekend sponsoring vendor. Trick or Treat Studios is the one-stop shop for high-quality Halloween and horror. Shop masks, costumes, figures, collectibles, games, and more from your favorite movies. Find Trick or Treat Studios online at trickortreatstudios.com.
Joel Robinson Hart is a Scarefest weekend sponsoring vendor. Joel Robinson has been the official Scarefest weekend artist since its beginning in 2008. Joel is a movie cover artist and a Universal Monsters artist. Visit Joel for posters, canvases, t-shirts, purses, and backpacks. Visit Joel's Etsy page at joelrobinsonart.com.
Hey, Scarefest fans, this is Joe Lewis with Bonehead Weekly, and this week you're getting a twofer because I am tackling a subject that we don't talk about enough in the horror community. That's, well, let me adjust my cam. And that are movies and shows that pretend they're horror films or shows, but they're not. They're lying to us, trying to get our money. The two that I want to talk about this week are things that I one of them I really enjoyed. It's not really a horror film, and another, it's not really a horror show. And the other one kind of sells itself as a horror film. Even when you go through, it's listed in horror, but it's not really a horror film. So first up is True Detective Season 4, Night Country. True Detective Season 4 is dead up, has a lot of influence of John Carpenter, and John Carpenter's The Thing. In fact, so much I argued with Chad, one of the other boneheads, about this. He's like, what are you talking about? I was like, well, just because it's in the snow. It's like, no. There are shots like and it's just creepy, of these men frozen in the snow. There's other things. In fact, when they're in, if you've got Max and you have True Detective, you watched it, when they're in where the men are who disappear, you can see on the shelf The Thing, and then it cuts back to The Thing again as the DVD, and they have to move it just so you know, yeah, we've seen the movie. We were trying to get it. But the problem is, as much as I love Jodie Foster in this, and I like the show, it was great. It's only about 6 or 7 episodes. It's not horror, and they're leading it, but the payoff, and I know I'm giving away a spoiler, it's not horror. They explain it away. And the acting's fantastic. The writing's really good. It's just the conclusion kind of like, oh man, you could have done something with it. No, True Detective Season 1 kind of has a supernatural element to it as well. Plus, my other little critique of this is the great character actor John Hawkes is in this as Hank Pryor, and he's so underutilized. But Jodie Foster is amazing. And basically, it takes place in Ennis, Alaska, where these men operate a research facility, and they vanish. And Chief Danvers, played by Jodie Foster, an Inuit, other state trooper detective. They have to go through the darkness and figure out what's going on, dig into what's going on and what's happened, and it leads, and it's good, and it's a great show. but it's not horror. And I think they really try to sell it as a terror picture, as a movie. The other one is last year's Men, and Men is written and directed by Alex Garland. Alex Garland gave us 28 Days Later. He wrote the screenplay for that. 28 Weeks Later, he did a couple movies I love, Annihilation. When he hits, it hits, and when he doesn't, it's still interesting. He has the #1 movie out in America right now, Civil War. Men is about a lady who goes to a cottage because her husband has committed suicide because they were going to break up, and this man keeps showing up in it's the same actor playing different roles, and the acting's fantastic, and it's sold as a horror film, but it's not. It's kind of it's very much a movie about, and I'm not knocking it, I get it, I don't know that I'm the audience, but it's very much about men and toxic masculinity and different toxic man traits, which are all true. In each one of the men roles that is played by the same man represents one of those stereotypical toxic male traits. They all exist, I know that, but it's not a horror film. Now, the last 20 minutes of Men is bug fuck crazy. I'm sorry about the F word, but it's just crazy. And there's some great visuals and some great effects work. It doesn't really have what you're going to call, so I'm just going to let you know now, a satisfying ending. But it is an interesting movie. And if you want to talk about masculinity and toxic masculinity that's come up a lot in the last 4 or 5 years, Men represents that in a movie that's really a fantasy and not a horror film. We've seen this before. This happened a lot in the 90s. Where there were several movies that were made as horror films, but they're really horror films made for people who won't watch horror films. These are called horror films trying to get the horror market when they're not really terror pictures at all. Do I recommend these? Of course. If you have Max, please, they're both on Max. Watch Night Country. It's definitely the second best, right behind the first season of True Detective. It's written and directed by a lady named Isa Lopez, who's a Mexican director. If I wasn't familiar with her work, I'd like to go back and watch it. It's very talented. It's just not horror. It's sold as horror, but it's not. And the other one is Men. If you have Max, check out Men, especially if you want a movie that maybe is thought-provoking, non-linear. It's not necessarily exactly what you think it's going to be. Check it out. Let me know what you think. What do you all think? Does it bother you? This has been Joe Lewis of Bonehead Weekly.
And welcome back, everybody. We had a few more moments here with our guest, Danielle Harris. Now, I'm going to get the one guy that asked the first question that I butchered so badly in text. He did have a follow-up. In your plans on doing these films with Scout, do you have your eyes on a comedy? Just a good old buddy comedy?
Well, these are all going to still be in the horror world, but there are definite elements of comedy in all of them. So you will get to see a little bit of a different side of us than you've seen before. I can't really do a horror movie that doesn't have some lightness to it because it's just too intense, especially starring and directing. I don't want to, I've taken on those roles as an actress, and then you do it once and you're like, that was awesome. I don't ever want to be like in a cage in a basement being raped. I'm good. I've played that role, and it's great as an actress to like do that, but I have to have it be fun and funny and have there be an element of campiness to it for me to want to be in it. So while we're not doing any comedies, so to speak, there's still a comedic element to the horror that we're going to do together.
Joseph Stacker wants to know, what was your favorite thing to do while you were acting in Halloween 5? He says he remembers you talking about it being a big party on set.
Yeah, so my favorite thing to do actually was order room service. French fries to my room was like something that I thought was the coolest thing in the world at 10, that I would be able just to call up and say, can I have French fries brought to my room? And I still actually like to order French fries from room service when I go to my room, but I just watch true crime and sit on the bed while I'm eating them now. Yeah, I mean, we actually, our podcast we did today, I was talking about, that documentary, Quiet on Set, and all the trauma a lot of kids went through and my experiences. And one of the conversations was about on Halloween 5, how he didn't realize it back then that it was really wrong, but we would wrap in the morning, we'd work all through the night, we'd get done at 8 in the morning when, the sun came up, we drove back to the hotel, and I would go into like some of the floors in hotels have like the the one room where if you have that special key card, you can go in, you can get snacks or drinks or whatever they serve, food at certain times of the day, whatever that floor is called. And I would go in, we'd go back to my room, and there would be a bunch of the cast and crew, 2 rooms, my mom's and mine next to each other, adjoining. And I would go in the mini bar area and stick my hand behind, like in the cabinet, and steal little alcohol bottles for everybody, because I was the only one small enough to get my hand in there and do it. And I would do it. And I thought it was just the coolest thing. Aside from taping Greg Nicotero's underwear to the wall of the hotel down the hallway, it was another thing that I really like to do, apparently. So it was just a big party. Again, these are things that happened in 1989 that probably nowadays, like, I wouldn't let my 10-year-old be up at that hour with all that going on in my hotel room. They would be in bed and asleep, and that's it. But it was definitely fun and an experience.
Now, you mentioned true crime. What do you watch?
Friggin' everything and anything that I could possibly find. Anything that comes up on Netflix. Anytime there's Dateline 2020, anything on ID Channel, any cold case files, any forensic files, you name it, and I watch it.
I've gotten into that myself. My thing, basically at lunchtime, I have an hour to kill there, so I have started, and I started on Netflix, burned through I finished the internet, you might say.
Yeah.
But on Tubi is just amazing. They've just got them stacked on top of each other. And I'm right now, I don't even know how many seasons there is. Murder Comes to Town.
Oh.
I recommend Murder Comes to Town. It's about all these killings in small towns, and it's never like the guy that just got out of jail. They always find out it's like the dude's niece or somebody like that.
Right.
It's just, I trust nobody now. Nobody.
I mean, my like news alert on my phone, it's like 10 of them a day of something crazy. I mean, a lot of it now is like, people leaving their kid. Like, a woman left her kid for like 11 days a couple weeks ago, and like went on vacation, left her poor baby in her crib. Oh, you know what I started? I found something on Instagram that I started watching, which took me down a rabbit hole. It's a group of people that do cleanup after someone's died, which I never knew, like, what do they do with the apartment after someone's died? But it's like, it's not like murder. It's like someone that's been dead for like a month, where their body has melted through the bed, and they've only knew that somebody was dead because their body fluid started seeping in from the ceiling, and the apartment underneath was like, why are there maggots in my ceiling? So it's that kind of stuff that I'm like, oh my God, I want to know everything, which is so weird and wrong, but I'm really interested in all of that stuff.
Last question came from the chat room. What horror movies do you watch? What is your favorite horror movie?
Poltergeist is my favorite. I think, as I've gotten older, I've wondered why everybody loves Halloween 4 so much. I mean, it's such a great movie, but like that usually is like, everyone's like, that's my favorite, or I could watch that movie over and over and over out of all of the Halloweens, at the first and that one. And most of my fan base are my age. It's rare that I find someone that's, younger. Usually everyone's right around like mid 40s-ish, 40s, 50s. And I think it's because maybe Halloween 4 was the first movie that they either snuck and saw or caught on TV or actually went to the theater. It was their introduction into horror. And because it was a child that was getting traumatized, I think it resonated and it stuck with them. And then they watched me throughout the years and felt like family. And I think when I saw Poltergeist, it was the same thing. I saw a child being, almost dying. And it still scares the crap out of me. And I love Jo Beth Williams. And actually, my kid went to school in California with the family that lives in the Poltergeist house, which I did not know. And then when I went to drop my kid off for a play date, I was like, oh my God, you're freaking kidding me. So I still think that movie is really cool. And again, it's probably because it was one of the first horror movies that I ever saw, and it resonated because of Carol Ann, and it stayed with me forever.
Well, Danielle, we talked about it not long ago on here. It was a PG-13.
Yeah.
So like you said, it was PG actually when it came out. So a bunch of people our age, that was the first introduction to horror, because parents didn't think anything about letting them go see Poltergeist.
I mean, my mom and dad took me to see Gremlins in the drive-in. And that movie still, as I'm looking at a gremlin right now that I have a big like puppet sitting up here, it still scares me because that, you know, I think I was like 5 sitting in the, I mean, I probably shouldn't have even known, but they didn't, you know, back then you didn't know like this is probably going to traumatize me.
Yeah, back in the 80s, I mean, kids could buy cigarettes and liquor and everything.
We had candy cigarettes. Are you kidding? I used to buy those candy cigarettes. We didn't have car seats and we all survived.
Yeah, we did all right. Yeah. Danielle, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. It's been fun talking to you. And
thank you.
We want to remind everybody she'll be at Scarefest 2024 coming up October 18th through 20th.
Yes, and buy tickets, you guys, for our Talk Scary to Me live event. We're going to, hopefully we'll sell out the space. Usually I think we had about 120 last year, and I think the space holds about 175 or 200. So if we're at the same space, we're going to pack it and sell it out and have a great time.
You got more to pack. I think we're moving you to we're making the room bigger.
Oh, great.
So yeah. So
let's do it.
Everybody.
I'll see you guys in October.
I do want to point out next week is the next council episode. We will be talking about insider stuff for Scarefest. So join us next Friday for more with Brandon and Adrian. Come back and see us.